Chapter 1. The Pride Test. It was early Sunday morning, and things were beginning to quiet down at the prayer center for James Robison's ministry. Volunteers were finishing their shifts and heading off to church, and the only two people left to answer the phones were myself and Terry Redmond, a good friend, who also happens to be James Robison's son-in-law. An interesting series of events had led me to the prayer center that day. I was only in my 20s, but I had been involved in ministry for several years. Things happened pretty fast after I surrendered my life to Jesus Christ. I got saved at the age of 19, and 10 months later, I started working for James Robison, an evangelist who was preaching in citywide evangelistic crusades. He asked me to start traveling with him and speaking at junior and senior high school assemblies. I had only been a Christian for a year when I began to travel and preach the gospel. Pretty heady stuff for someone so young and even younger in the Lord. Though I started out speaking at public schools, it wasn't long before I was preaching at crusades. James was even gracious enough to give me a title, Associate Evangelist. Wow! I was only 20 years old, but because of my association with James, I was already involved in television and preaching to large crowds. And now I had a title to prove I was a bona fide evangelist. It seemed to me that the favor of God was on everything I touched. What a destiny lay before me! What could stop me now? In retrospect, it's clear that an enemy called pride had begun to creep into my life. Slowly, prideful thoughts began to take up residence in my mind. Thoughts that could not coexist with a proper reverence for a holy God. By the time I was 25, I had become far too accustomed to hearing people tell me how gifted I was. I began to listen to their praise. Worse, I began to expect it. People would say to me, "You're so gifted. You can do anything." And with all the wisdom of my 25 years, I began to believe them. I started thinking, man, I'm something. I'm really successful. Deep down, I knew I was prideful, but I didn't know what to do about it. The more my pride grew, the more it seemed to stand in my way. I began to pray about it, asking God for help. I said, God, I know I have pride. I know my insecurity makes me vulnerable to it. I need to be free of this, but I don't know what to do. One day, as I was praying, I asked the Lord, what can I do about this? Is there anything I can do to deal with the pride in my life? His answer didn't exactly thrill me. I sensed God telling me, well, here's a thought. You could step out of ministry and take a regular job. I suppose my response didn't exactly thrill him either. I said, yes, that is a thought, Lord. It's a bad thought, but it is a thought. The religious part of me couldn't imagine it would be God's will for me to leave ministry. After all, I was being used so mightily by him. But try as I might, I could not get rid of that thought. It grew stronger and stronger until the Lord orchestrated the circumstances for me to step out of ministry. I finally did what the Lord suggested. I started looking for a regular job, but I couldn't find one. I quickly discovered I wasn't as valuable as I had presumed. Think about it. When all you've been is an evangelist, what do you list as your skills on a job application? Strong preaching ability? Gives excellent altar calls? Exegetes well? From a practical standpoint, I simply didn't have a lot of qualifications for a regular job.